My cat's freaking out, of course.
Hello and welcome to episode 53 of the Metacast podcast. Today is the Metacast movie show about Interstellar. So Interstellar is a film written and directed by Christopher Nolan. Well, excuse me, I'm sorry. Hold on. Interstellar is a film written by Christopher and Jonathan Nolan, directed by Christopher Nolan, came out in the year 2014. It stars Matthew McConaughey, John Lithgow, Anne Hathaway, Michael Caine. It's actually got like a lot of recognizable names in the cast. Had a budget of $165 million, box office take of $677 million. From Rotten Tomato scores, the tomato meter, so critic score is 72% and audience score is 85%. What do you say, man? Should people watch Interstellar?
Yes. For shiz, recommend.
I agree too. I mean, of course, like I kind of noticed one thing is as we do this, I think the person who chose the movie is probably always going to recommend to see it. So it's more the question for the person that didn't choose the movie. But of course, I recommend to see it. I think it's a brilliant movie. I think it's a great, interesting take on science fiction that is pretty emotional, pretty good drama. For me personally, it's like my ideal type of movie, other than like Marvel Cinematic movies, but it is like almost my ideal type of movie that is just a very emotional, however nerdy, scientific, and it takes place in space, of course. What's your final thoughts?
It's like a sci-fi movie for people that like drama.
Yeah,
because I think that being someone that enjoys science fiction, I didn't really think of it as much of a science fiction film. I thought of it more just being based on like human elements and like things that I think everybody can relate to.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of relatable stuff that happens in the movie that you need a box of Kleenex for, or
yeah,
tissues,
definitely.
whatever you call them, facial tissues. So yeah, I mean, I thought it was great. I am a sci-fi fan, but I think that even if you hate sci-fi, this would be a good movie to watch for anybody.
I think you're right. It's not necessarily a sci-fi, but it does have certain like which I mean, they're not even sci-fi elements. They're just actual like scientific elements that are kind of mind-bending, kind of like a little more on the nuanced scientific side. But yeah, I think it's a great movie. I would recommend to watch it, and Distance does too. Perfect. That is like, all right. So that's our short little rundown on Interstellar. Now, spoiler territory. We are completely fine to talk about anything that is. We can spoil everything. We can talk about the fact that Batman dies at the end.
Yep.
So yeah, getting into like the actual meat of it then. So this is the first time you've seen this movie. That actually surprises me because like we kind of just talked about, we're both kind of the science fiction nerdy types. Like more often than not, when I see that a movie is coming out. Like if I see any sort of trailer and there's like any sort of science fiction feeling to it, I'm like, oh, I know I'm gonna end up seeing that. So I remembered like once I saw the trailer for Interstellar, before even knowing that it was like Christopher Nolan or like knowing that because I love Christopher Nolan movies, but I just kind of knew that I was gonna see it just based on like, oh cool, it's a sci-fi movie. So it surprised me that you never saw this in the past 6 years.
Yeah, when it came out, I kind of it was like I think it was like a weird point in my existence, and I think there was like a lot of shit going on, and I think that I just sort of missed it. Like it was kind of like wasn't really on the radar. Like I'd heard of it. I didn't even know Matthew McConaughey was in it.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was a completely different movie. There's I think I had it mixed up with another film.
Okay.
And then when I actually found it and watched it, I was like, I don't remember this at all.
Okay.
So yeah, I just think it just wasn't on the radar at the time. I think that at that time, really the only movies I was seeing were like the really high profile ones, so like Marvel films and crap like that.
Yeah.
Like that's, and whatever Dwayne Johnson was in at the time.
That is, it's really cool that, so basically you went into this blind. Like you didn't have much expectation or anything going in. Like, did you watch a trailer or anything or nice?
Nope.
Okay.
I just turned this shit on and watched.
So what, do you remember going in, what kind of expectations you had? Did I lay the footwork for anything or like give you any expectations or?
I didn't really have any. When you said that it was a tearjerker, I was like, what?
Mm.
I was like confused. I was like, is he screwing with me? Um, because I didn't, because of the title and
Yeah.
what I thought it was about. I didn't know. I didn't even know that it was some kind of like weird, like apocalyptic film. I wasn't even
Mm-hmm.
aware of that. And then the beginning, like with the little interviews and stuff.
Yeah. Which
And Blight.
I think it's so cool right at the beginning. I'm like, sorry to like, I don't want to take too far off track, but you made me think about it. I think it's so cool that right at the beginning, they tell you that Murph survives. The first face in the movie you see in the first voice is hers saying like, well, my father was a pilot. And like the first time I saw this movie, that never occurred to me. Like later in the movie, I'm wondering like, okay, like does humanity survive, or like what's actually going to happen? But it's like, the entire time, if you pay enough attention, that Murph is alive. Like,
Yeah, I didn't recognize it at the beginning, but I wondered why that was the first line that they had.
mm-hmm.
And then like, when I realized that, toward the end of the film, when it's like, your daughter, I'm like, ah, shit, that was her. Fuck.
Yep.
I had like a feeling about that. I wasn't really sure like what they were getting at, but I had a feeling that there was something relevant about that particular person. I was like, who the hell is that?
Yeah.
And I think that with a lot of it, I was just so distracted by some of the other stuff going on, that I ended up really like not trying to figure it out ahead of time.
Gotcha,
like if I was watching like a mystery movie, I would have been like all over it.
Yeah, exactly.
Or like an M. Night Shyamalan movie or some crap where there's going to be a twist.
Yeah, you're not like prepared waiting for it or anything, or like trying to figure it out. Exactly. Yeah, I get you.
Yeah. It's just weird to. It's just a weird movie to think about, because I feel like it bombards you, because you're a person that's watching a movie where there's a whole bunch of shit happening and there's plot twists and all this other crap. Yet at the same time, they're taking you through, assuming you're not a psychopath, like a emotional kind of thing that everybody can relate to.
Mm-hmm.
But
and it's literally like high stakes too at the whole time, because it's like literally like humanity will cease to exist if we don't succeed in this mission. So yeah, it's like definitely an emotionally draining or emotionally exhausting movie, and not in a bad way. I don't mean that in a bad way, but
yeah, I mean, it's a movie that makes you feel alive, and that you feel a lot of feelings. But I think that the thing that I thought was kind of obnoxious about it was there was like this thing about like Contact. Do you remember that movie?
Yeah.
With Jodie Foster.
Yeah, I like Contact. Yeah.
What the fact that he's like that Cooper is so rational at the beginning of the movie, I was like, oh, I know what they're gonna do here.
Yeah, of course.
He will learn faith. I'm like, God damn it! Like, why? Like, I just saw that when he was like asking her for like a rational explanation of the whole ghost thing.
Yeah.
And, and to me, like, I kind of thought like, well, that kid's a bit old to be, like, for me to dismiss the kid using the term ghost. I think she was 10, right? That's a little old for me to try to explain it away and be like, oh, that's so silly, sweetie. Ghosts aren't real. Like, I think I would do that to like maybe like when one of my nephews was like maybe 4, 5, 6.
Yeah.
Or like if my niece said it now, I think I'm a terrible uncle. She just turned 5.
Okay.
I would still kind of dismiss it a bit, like, and be like, oh, you watch too much TV, kid.
Yeah.
But I think that at that age, like, I might have been less dismissive.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think that it is. I mean, even like Lithgow's character is even like, Coop, what are you doing? Like, why are you just so dismissive of what he's saying or what she's saying? Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's fucking weird that all of your farm equipment just malfunctioned and converged on your house.
Well, that hadn't happened yet.
What?
The first thing that happened was her talking about the ghost because of the little model of the lunar lander falling off the shelf or whatever. But
like, it's weird that he goes back there and he finds coordinates, which I don't even know how the hell. What
the coordinates came from the dust lines.
So, but which was the 0 and which was the 1? Because it was binary, right?
I would guess that it's just it's a number. Well, no, I don't think it's like a I think they were like the lines in the dust were like wide and thin to represent. I don't know. I have no idea how we figured out which one was 0 and which one was 1, but
and it's just strange that he keeps this like like strangely like robotic rational thing going on
Mm-hmm.
while he makes some coordinates, stumbles upon what happens to be NASA,
Yeah.
which that shit was weird to me because like he walks into a room and there's these people that you wouldn't expect. Oh, we're NASA. It's like, oh, NASA's a washed up organization now.
Yeah,
Now
basically.
defunct NASA.
Which that's another thing I never noticed that they kind of set the groundwork for earlier was when he was in the like the PTA meeting with the teachers at the school. He said something about like, well, I pay my taxes. What does that money go towards? And the teacher's like, well, definitely not the universities. And it's like, it does kind of like let you know, it's like, okay, well, so they don't know it necessarily. So there is still taxes going on and people aren't necessarily sure where their tax money is going. So it is like, there could be this, you know, kind of black books. Is what they call that whenever it's like the funding for it is like kind of hidden.
I think so.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying? Like, so it makes sense that like, at least that it could exist in this world, I guess, that there's like this, the government's trying to keep together this organization that most people would probably at that point argue is unnecessary. Like most people with, you know, space travel, they don't look at that as like a necessary thing.
Yeah, and it's interesting because if you look at what humanity's focused on, like I've heard several people say that it's important for farmers and, you know, infrastructure people, construction workers, engineers, you know, what have you, to do their job because it allows artists the ability to do art.
Yeah.
But it was strange to me to think that in this film, the farmers need to farm. And it actually made me realize that there's something I think that I personally undervalue, like the fact that I can like, let's just say I want a fucking pineapple right now.
Mm-hmm.
I can just go get one. I can drive 20 minutes and grab a pineapple.
Yeah. And you live in a place where they would not grow at all. Like,
right.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was really taking that for granted because it didn't, I think that I didn't even recognize even what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
Like I take this shit for granted. And I think that if the fact that food is such an easy thing for us to come by where we live, that the engineers are able to engineer. It's not even art. Like this sort of like kind of, I would call it dystopian. In this kind of dystopian world in the film, it's at the point where it's not just, we haven't just given up on like art because it's not a priority because people are dying.
Yeah.
Like we've given up on like technology.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, you know how Cooper's all like, well, you know, we're explorers. We're not doing what we do.
That wasn't bad.
Like it's thanks. I was like, is he a moron? Like are his priorities screwed up?
I don't know if it's screwed up priorities or just like a strong passion for something. You know, I think that like, I mean, in which actually, I guess it could be a little bit of both, right? You could probably argue if you have a very strong passion for something, maybe that will end up screwing up your priorities. So maybe it is both. And maybe that is like why he ends up being someone that's able to go on this mission that is like literally, okay, leave your kids behind, miss their entire childhood, adulthood, everything to save the rest of us, because their priorities weren't, you know, most people's priorities would be like, I need to be here for my family. Like this is what matters, versus his priorities being like, no, my head's in the stars and I want to travel and I want to explore. But
yeah, well, it kind of makes me think of the line, because I actually wrote that line down where he says to the professor, I've got kids, professor. And then the professor says, get out there and save them.
Yeah.
But it's also something that like a 10-year-old can't process, like a young kid. And even his teenage son, there's a lot of like silly tough guy shit going on.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like, hey, take care of things. Like, all right, dad. And I'm like, oh, wow, guys. Okay.
Well, you mean your truck? Yeah. Like, yeah, like that.
Yeah, that's all he has to say. Can I drive your truck?
Like, oh, I forgot I had a shot here.
A what?
I have a shot. I was going to take a shot. I forgot about that.
Oh, of the spirited stuff.
So how did you feel about the I wanted, like, I specifically brought this up to you before we watched this. I didn't like tell you what the line was or what the theme was or anything, but how did you feel about the whole idea of like I think Coop's line, "Once you're a parent, you're the ghost of your children's future." And it's about more like, I mean, the way he, what he was really trying to say was like, once you have children, it's almost like your priorities need to shift. Like you were just talking about, it's like you need to exist to be there for them rather than existing for yourself, I guess. How did you feel about that kind of that idea throughout this movie?
So it's weird because that sounds like a pretty profound line, and for some reason, I guess it just got lost in that film for me. I don't even remember it. But
it was the scene when they were he and Murph were on her bed and she was crying right when he was getting ready to leave. And it was like she was even talking about the ghost, and she was trying to tell him that the ghost was telling him to stay and everything like that. And he was like, and that's what he said. Like, no, he's like, you got to understand, once you have children, you are already the ghost of your children's future. Like,
whenever we talk about a movie, like, movies must be boring for you because it sounds like you have everything figured out. Like half the shit, like that was clearly foreshadowing, and like I didn't even.
Well, but also keep in mind, this is a movie I've seen probably 20 times and you've seen once.
Oh,
you know what I mean? Like, yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. This is a like, I'm not gonna say this is my favorite movie ever, but it's definitely like a top. It's in my top 10 probably, I would say.
But and like the way that I read that line, or the way that it kind of hits me, is that I've thought to myself a few times that, we've got this idea of being great, in air quotes, if you're listening to us off YouTube, that you kind of want to find some way to put your name somewhere so people will remember you. But
yeah,
and it doesn't really matter necessarily what, but a lot of people want to remain relevant. And I think that there has been some thought that I've had that's admittedly maybe somewhat self-centered, but I've thought to myself with children that it's not necessarily the idea that, at least with that line in particular, in context of that, it's not the idea of necessarily like living for them while they're alive, even though that is what you're doing for the most part. But that it's kind of like putting something forward into humanity. I feel like I will stop existing at one point, and if I don't have kids, then I'm not doing something to put something good forward. Like if I have a child and raise that child and work to help that child be as good as they can be and fulfill as much of their potential as possible, then it's possible that I can be helping humanity later.
Yeah, and like passively.
And that child may do things while I am a ghost,
Exactly.
In that context, I think of a ghost, like the way he means it, is that you exist in their thoughts and ideas and their imagination, and that the things that you did and the things that you taught them are meaningful. And I've noticed that in my life, when I talk to my older siblings or my older cousins or my parents about things that they did or said that affected me profoundly, they don't remember most of it. Because it affected me that way.
Exactly. And it was completely different for them, even though they may have been there in the same situation or whatever. Yeah.
Right. And I think I've said on a past episode, my oldest sister taught me how to tie a tie.
Really?
She has no recollection of it whatsoever.
See, I think that's something that's really interesting about us doing the favorite line segment. Is it's going to be really interesting to see over the course of a year and 52 different movies, like which lines stand out to people as like, oh, this was my favorite, not part of the movie, but just like my favorite line of dialogue. I think that's like, I mean, like you're saying, it just kind of tells you something about that, the way that person's mind works almost.
Yeah, and for me, like I think that I was in the scene that this happened. Now that you've described it to me, I remember it vaguely now, but I think that I was just struck by all the emotion that was happening at the time.
Yeah.
And that I almost like didn't even hear the dialogue there. Plus I was hung up on the whole watch thing.
Yeah, which that again is like foreshadowing. They're obviously like kind of throwing something at you. Yeah. Which it makes me wonder. I've got like a note here. So in that scene, when you see it at the end from the other side, when he's in the hyperspace where he can affect the bookshelf, he's trying to tell himself to stay. But what happens if he stays? Like, doesn't the whole movie doesn't work if he stays, right? Like the whole point of what he did earlier was give himself the coordinates to get to NASA. Like why would he set up the groundwork to go on this mission and then tell himself to stay? Like, yeah, well, he misses his daughter. I understand the emotion of that, but I don't get that part.
To be quite frank, that part fucked up the entire film for me.
Yeah, I wondered.
I think that it's important for people to watch it because of a lot of the other stuff involved. Like, oh, great, a time travel paradox, just fucking brilliant. This hasn't been overdone. Because it's like I've told like when people talk about quantum mechanics, I'm like, quantum mechanics is like a sci-fi film with time travel. You'll never actually make sense of it.
Yeah.
And they talk about both things in the film. So when I saw the time travel loop, I was like, would this have happened? If not, and the thing is that there's no logic that can be used to determine it. So we can talk about that.
It depends on which rules of time travel you want to follow, right? Because there's the two I forget if it's like, is it Terminator versus Back to the Future? Or there's the two, like, are those the same? But either way, basically, it's like one of them is when you travel into the past, if you change something, it creates an alternate timeline, which that's not Back to the Future. Back to the Future, if you change something in the past, the future is in danger, which is like kind of the whole, like, that's what goes on in all of those movies. It's the whole like plot device they use is like, there is only one timeline, and if you affect too much in the past, you can mess up the future. Versus, so in this, then, like, if he were to send himself the information in the past telling him, you could send yourself the data that was important, but without already well, I guess, okay, so hold on, would that work? You send yourself the coordinates to get to NASA, you send yourself all the data that needs to be given to those people, and then you just take it to them without that version of yourself ever needing to actually leave the planet. So if it's the one type of time travel rules where it's not like going to affect the future, then that could actually work, but it's still just weird.
Notice that in those time travel rules, no physicist is named.
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, well, yeah, because time travel is not real. Yeah,
right. We're talking about a movie, so I guess it makes sense. But it's always the same question. Well, if he knew then he couldn't know then without getting there, and if he didn't get there, then he couldn't have gotten to where he was in the future to then tell himself in the past.
Yeah,
and then that's a lot of the time, like, for those portions of movies where there's any kind of like manipulation of time, I just almost don't even really discuss it because it's just too difficult to make sense of. Oh my god! And I don't want either of us to have an aneurysm right now.
I'm totally gonna pick Donnie Darko as one of my movies this year.
But there was, oh god.
No, I'm just kidding. I would never do that to us.
I mean, I liked the movie, I did, but I like Donnie Darko a lot. But,
yeah, I like it too, but trying to make sense of it would literally, like, we'd have to pull up MS Paint and be like, all right, hold on. So this timeline goes here, this one goes here.
Yeah, it's weird to think that Jake Gyllenhaal was so young in that movie and Heath Ledger, and that they're both gone now.
Jake Gyllenhaal? What?
I'm just kidding. Jake Gyllenhaal didn't die.
Jesus. Oh my god.
I feel so awful.
I just got so scared. Poor Jake. Jake.
I would be upset. He does really good work. I've enjoyed almost everything he's done. But yeah, like the other thing that's a bit of a conundrum though is
first of all, real quick, we are pre-recording this episode. This is actually Tuesday, June 30th. If Jake Gyllenhaal dies before I post this episode, I'm gonna say it's your fault. 100%, you did it. You're a prime candidate. I've got evidence.
I'm a time traveler.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, if jinxing is a real thing, then I may have just killed Jake Gyllenhaal. I'm sorry, everyone.
God, that sucks. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Didn't mean to. But the they thing is, I think, like necessarily part of that whole thing. Like, it's weird that he told himself to stay because he was convinced that the mission meant nothing. But then when he gets discovered later, he realizes the mission actually meant something.
Yeah, and that's,
he was mistaken.
Well, I wonder. I mean,
that wasn't even what I was gonna say, but it just hit me right now. But that's fucking weird.
Is there a question that's like literally the moments where he was in the, like if we call it a tesseract, whatever area he was in, where they have constructed a 3-dimensional area that he can communicate to his past daughter? Was he only saying stay because of emotion? Does like really, like, if he really would have thought it out, would he have known that like that was that, like, literally him staying, okay, yes, he gets a few years with his daughter, which was probably great, but I mean more than a few years, right? Because she ended up living to be at least
Pretty
his
old.
age. Yeah.
Yeah.
Without them sending the data back, she was in her mid 30s or whatever. But so either way, he would get like a life with his daughter if he stayed, and it would doom humanity. Was he willing to do that at that point because of the emotion of seeing his daughter after however long it had been, and just saying like, okay, I'm at this point, I'm willing to throw that away for what I could have? Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, that's entirely possible, because I think that there's like a constant sort of dichotomy between like emotion and thought, or emotion and logic.
Yeah.
And there's a scene where, I forget Anne Hathaway's character's name, Amelia. When Amelia wants to go to a planet because she's in love with one of the people that's on there, and Matthew McConaughey specifically picks the opposite thing because he thinks she's being irrational.
Yeah.
And then when I forget what they're talking about exactly, but there's a part where
that was a good line where she's like, it doesn't mean I'm wrong. And he's like, honestly, Amelia, it might. And it's like, that is true. Yeah. Like, love does skew your ability to be rational. Yeah.
And her like whole transcendent kind of monologue about love was kind of like naive, but also at the same time interesting. And it's funny because then later you have a very like scientific, like evolutionary, like, or even creation, whatever. We'll call it evolutionary because we're rational people. But sorry if you're religious.
I don't think we have a religious viewer base. I think we've weeded them out over the past year. I think we're good.
I read the Bible sometimes. It's fun. So yeah. But I thought it was interesting that she like that little monologue that she did about it as being like some transcendent thing, and then Matt Damon sort of cheapening it later.
Yeah. Which also,
like, it's like,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
But just by crapping all over it and being like, well, it's an important part of human blah 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 blah. That's all I was gonna say.
But it is, and it's also kind of a biological trick. But I like that idea in the movie, that it is kind of like, it does kick around the idea of like, what about like love as a fundamental force almost? That it's like, it is kind of an emotion, quote unquote, or a force. I don't know why I put emotion in quotes and not force. A force, quote unquote, or an emotion that is like actually able to transcend the dimensions. Like, he's feeling something for, like it is kind of an interesting idea. I mean, it's not founded in anything that we can observe. So it's just kind of like a silly thing, but it is, I thought that was kind of cool though.
And I think that it was interesting because he ends up at a point where I don't remember, after that happens, she says something about like him seeing his family, and she says, we'll see how objective you are then.
Oh yeah, because basically the thing was like, if they go to man's planet first, there's not enough.
Oh yeah.
Excuse me. There's not enough fuel to go to Edmund's planet and then make it back to Earth. And it was more like, at that point, if man's planet doesn't work out, he has to make the choice between going to Edmund's planet and saving humanity, or going home and seeing his children again. And she was like, yeah, I trust you'll be as objective when you have to make an emotional choice, which I like that. I mean, it's kind of a biting line, it's kind of, almost petty, but at the same time, it was like, it made sense.
And that's kind of, it made me think about that, because you mentioned that he was maybe caught up in emotions when he was, chucking the books off the shelf, trying to make himself stay, or what have you. And it's also like, well, maybe it's a good thing that he was so skeptical and asked so many questions about stuff, and like asked for proof and things like that, because then he never would have gone to then be there to then talk to himself in the past, to then tell himself the wrong thing, to then go anyway. But that whole they thing, and he's just like, it's papal. I'm just not going to stop doing Matthew McConaughey impressions.
That's fine with me. Buy a Lincoln.
Well, it's like in the future they make this thing, so there's even more of the fucking time travel lunacy. So the future thems that are not like restricted by time, that are 5-dimensional, that can do basically whatever the fuck they want. They're like people from later
humanity, and like, I mean, we're talking millions of years in the future, probably. Yeah.
Right. And they're, that by many people's definition, I think actually by several religions' ideas, that defines a god.
Yeah, I mean, well, at that point, like, if you're talking evolution that far in a society that has not killed themselves, you would be god level. I mean, like, if you're talking humanity, if humanity lives millions of years from now without destroying themselves, think of the level our technology would be at. It's unfathomable.
It kind of makes me think about Dr. Manhattan from Watchmen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like that kind of, we would be like, I mean, that's what I'm saying too, is like, I'm glad they didn't even try to show you those beings at all or depict them, because it's like I don't even know if they would be physical beings. It's like, at that point, do we exist digitally? Like what? There's no telling. But it's basically, it seems like it's like humanity, that humanity, which I mean we'll call them humans, but you wouldn't at that point in time, you probably wouldn't, because they would be so like not the same as what humanity is now. But either way, they determined that there was a point in humanity's past where they were like, humanity would have collapsed or become extinct if it wasn't for some sort of intervention, and they were able to do that with gravity, basically.
Yeah. Oh my God, I just lost the thought I was having. I had a thought while you were talking, but then I was listening and I was thinking about what you were saying, and then I lost the thought that I had.
Gotcha.
Fuck. Whatever. I'll remember it in a minute. Oh my God, I totally lost it. I don't. Well, but there's all these things that we like, the wormhole and the black hole and all that other stuff that is attributed to them. But I do think it's cool that they never show who they are.
Yeah,
you don't really get to see them, but it's like
you think you do for a second with that the first handshake with Amelia, and that ended up being Cooper actually. Yeah. I thought that was kind of cool.
But and I also like, I mean, it's pretty obvious like what's gonna happen when the time thing, with that he's saying, oh, you'll be my age or whatever. It's pretty clear that what's gonna happen when you see that. But I don't know, man, because there's a lot of stuff that can't necessarily be tied together.
What do you mean? Go ahead.
Like the gravity thing, and how gravity is the thing that they were able to manipulate somehow, and then I don't know. There's a lot that just wasn't explained, and perhaps that's for the better.
Well, there's one part to me that just glaringly doesn't make sense. Is so I mean, for them to exist means that humanity lived through that point. So why did they need to send something back for humanity? Unless it's like one of those weird time paradoxes that it's like they did it from the future, which is the only reason why they ended up being in the future to begin with. So it's like it's one of those things that doesn't necessarily make sense unless you just kind of suspend disbelief, I guess, and just say like, oh, okay, it works. But that's one thing to me that just never really made sense. Was it's like, well, the fact that entity, those entities even exist, means that humanity lived through this detrimental period, so there was no need to intervene, no matter what.
Yep, another paradox. That's anytime a film creator wants to put something like that in a movie, it's just not going to make sense. I think that happens every time.
It makes me wonder though, like, I mean, there were more people and smarter people than me sitting around a lot of big tables discussing this movie before it came out. I'm sure that thought had been had. So I feel like there is a canon explanation for that someone out there came up with. Like, I feel like it makes sense in someone's version of this movie. I'd love to hear like what that explanation is, but I can't be the first person to think of that. Like,
I consider it low-hanging fruit. I think that a lot of creators say, well, we can make whatever the fuck we want. This will be a clever plot twist, and this is all we have to do. Like, I actually think time travel is hacky when it comes to writing.
I agree with you that a lot of creators do that. I don't think that Nolan does that. I respect his work too much to feel that there's just this plot hole that was never considered or never discussed. Like, I feel like he's I don't know. I
maybe in the future, Christopher Nolan has an ancestor, not an ancestor, a progeny, that's what you call it, that communicated with him from there to tell him exactly how this stuff works in a time where humans are more advanced.
I'll buy it. That works for me.
But it's, and I'm not saying, I'm just, it's not that I don't think that a film creator, I imagine that film creators are intelligent people, but they're not, I don't think they're smart enough to make sense of that stuff. For me, it's like, I appreciate that they used the creativity to create the plot twist.
But
I'm also comfortable with the fact that it can't really be explained outside of the film, and the film is still entertaining.
Yeah. Well, and I do like that with a lot of the I like with a lot of the weird science fiction-y, quote unquote, because I'm gonna use this in quotes because it's not fictional necessarily, but with a lot of the elements they used, they tried to be as scientifically accurate as possible, which I thought that was kind of cool. I mean, they consulted with like physicists, with like asking them how would how should we visually depict traveling into a black hole or into a wormhole or things like that, which I thought that was kind of cool to bring people on board that would that deal with those higher level ideas in their professional lives.
I thought it was funny that someone gave an astronaut a elementary school example of a wormhole.
Oh yeah, the
folding the paper and the pen. I was like, I think you are mansplaining to Matthew McConaughey right now. Like, I think he knows.
That would have been so much better if it was Amelia that asked, and he he explains it to her that way. Excuse me, are you mansplaining this to me right now?
It would have been funny if Tars interjected.
That would have been perfect. Yeah, that would have been perfect. So one great that this movie, I think, did something brilliant with marketing that I have not seen from a movie since, which is a weird claim. I do and we're kind of, we're talking about this movie 6 years in the, away from its release. So it's kind of like, it's different at this point, but they did not at all advertise that Matt Damon was in this movie. That was a surprise.
Yeah.
Which I thought was really fucking cool. Yeah. I thought that you don't, they talk about, Dr. Mann being the best of us and and he's supposed to be this great person. You have no idea who he is. And even makes you wonder a few times in the movie. I was like, are we going to meet Mann? Who is this? And that was really cool that one of the biggest actors in the fucking world was this hidden surprise that was not on any of the posters, not on any of the trailers, on no marketing material at all.
Yeah, and I mean that was a cool part of the movie. I was actually really there was no billing or anything about him, and I was just like, that's a surprise. It was a plot twist in that it was a familiar celebrity that showed up out of nowhere who was in, and this was this before The Martian or after The Martian?
This would have been before. I'm sure this is before. This is 2014. When did The Martian come out? The Martian, IMDb, 2015. This was the year before. Wow.
I'm sure that in the casting, someone was like, Matt Damon, though. I was like, yeah, did you see him in Interstellar?
You might be right. Yeah, you very well may be right. Yeah.
But the thing that I thought was interesting is when he more or less attempts to kill Matthew McConaughey and save himself, that when Cooper looks at him and says, you're a coward, he's like, yep. Mm-hmm.
Well, he realizes that he is.
I am a coward.
Yeah, I'm sure, and he's dealt with that idea for years. I'm sure I liked that the whole man arc in this movie. I thought was really fucking interesting because that would be imagine that slow suicide of you're on a planet, you are the one human on this planet, you are completely alone, and you know that you're dead. There's nothing you can do. You are 100%. You're gonna die of whatever sort of, if you run out of food first, water first, whatever. And you have a button you can press that people will come and get you, but it's because they think that your planet is the new home for Earth. That is so and I love that they set him up as supposed to be he's the best of us. He is he's what humanity, he's the pinnacle of humanity. He's a great human, and he's the one that succumbs to being a coward, being afraid to die alone for nobility's sake, basically, or for humanity's sake, more or less. I thought that was really well done. I thought that was kind of a cool thing that they threw into that movie.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it would kind of more be the alone part that would freak me out if I were in the actual situation.
Well, yeah, because you're in the situation right now, but you're not alone.
Yeah,
you are literally in that situation right now, but there's more people here. But if you were on Earth completely alone, and there was a button on your keyboard that said, "Hey, Ty will come hang out in 2 years," you'd probably press that button, right?
Yeah, I'd be like, "See you in 2 years, buddy. It's gonna be fun."
And lay down for the long nap. But so, what did you think? I thought it was kind of interesting that the first time like I said, I've literally probably seen this movie. I said 20 times earlier. If I'm being 100% honest, I've probably seen this movie maybe 8 or 9 times. The first time I've noticed this was this last viewing. I thought it was really cool that Matt Damon's character, which arguably is I don't want to call him the antagonist of the movie, but he is like the closest thing to a bad guy this movie has.
Ooh, she says they might face death, but not evil when they go into space.
True, and they do kind of face evil, yeah. But I think it's kind of cool that Man's character tells us the one big lie that we hear, basically the biggest lie that endangers the characters we care about, but then also tells us the truth about like Professor Brand, that, you know, lying to them the entire time about Plan A and everything. And then like, so it's kind of cool that this one character kind of like he's the Loki, quote unquote, you know, he's the deceiver, yeah. But he also tells you the biggest truth in the movie and kind of brings around that twist.
Yeah, that I didn't really think about that, but it is fairly interesting. But he seems really cynical to some degree.
Yeah,
almost kind of a nihilist. Like he's the atom ruins everything of it all. He's like the well actually guy.
Well, I mean, in all reality, how many years was he supposed to be alone on that planet? Like, that's going to turn anyone into a nihilist, right? Like, yeah, I'm sure anyone's going to be super cynical at that point. You show up, they've been there alone for 5, 6, 7 years, whatever. Like, yeah, I think it was well done. I liked that. And one thing we didn't talk about too, right before that, so of course, you know, the movie, they go to this I would call it a solar system, but it's actually the sun is a black hole in the system. It's not a solar. Would you still call it a solar system? I don't know. I'd like to know what astronomers' take on that is, because it's not usually solar means orbiting a star, and that's a collapsed star.
A planetary system.
Planetary system, like you normally like planetary system is the Earth and the Moon is a planetary system. When you're talking about the object that other things are orbiting. Or like Jupiter and its 60 some moons is a planetary system. Our solar system, we talk about that because we orbit Sol, or the sun. Either way, the system they go to that is orbiting Gargantua, there are 3 planets there that they think could be possible bastions of human life, basically. There's Miller's planet, there's Man's planet, and there's Edmund's planet. They go and they visit Miller's planet first. That's the water planet, basically, where it's you know, like, I thought that was really, really well done. And that is the big first plot device that kind of comes in the movie, where we learn about Cooper talks about it earlier, like we talked about in the scene where he's leaving, the time dilation aspect. That I think a lot of people are not really familiar with the fact that this is part of our universe. We don't deal with this because we all live on the face of Earth, where gravity and velocity is the same for all of us. But it's like, as you go fast, or as you are close to a very strong gravitational pull, time changes for you. That it's what's called time dilation, and that is a real thing in our universe. And that the concepts of that in this movie are done very accurately. And like it seems just like a science fiction-y thing where like, oh well, these people go to this planet and then they come back and this dude's, you know, he's lived 17 years when for them it was just an hour. Like, that seems like a ridiculous science fiction concept, but that is actually scientifically true. That happens in our universe. And I thought it was really cool on Miller's planet, where the way they did that, where it's, you know, they tell you that it's like I forget the first how they break down the time to begin with, but it's like they tell you that 1 hour on there is worth however long on Earth. I forget how they tell you that, but I did do some research, and in that scene when they go down to Miller's planet, the music changed, and it changes to this really cool score. Did I write down who did the music for this movie? I didn't. It did great though. Whoever did the score for this movie did fucking brilliant. And I thought something they really did awesome on Miller's planet was the score changes to this time or like there's a lot of clock ticking in the soundtrack for that when they're on that planet, and it just so happens that one click is 17 hours of Earth time every time they do that. So it's kind of cool. You can watch that scene and just think of like every click you're hearing in the soundtrack is 17 hours of his daughter's life passing in like where she is.
Oh damn.
But I thought that was like your first introduction to this movie of like the dangers they're facing, because they're all kind of like, they think they have things figured out, they get to this planet, and that's kind of where even Cooper even says, like, we were not prepared for this, like we have no idea what we were getting into. And like they were, I mean, they didn't even consider, which I also thought that was kind of silly, like they weren't considering the time dilation in their minds when they were saying like, oh, how was Miller's craft destroyed and all the debris was still together? And it's like, well, because for her, she just crashed hours ago. It has only been hours. It's like a mind-bending thing to think about, but it's so weird the way personal time works. We think of time as this like mechanical click that like 1 second for me is 1 second for the universe, and that's not how things work. And that's a really, really weird concept to try to get your mind around. And I think that it's cool for a like for lack of a better term, for like a mainstream blockbuster movie to tackle that concept and kind of show the difference in like personal clocks like that.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I don't know, I can't remember, but a lot of little kids think that when it's raining in one place, it's raining everywhere.
Yeah, or when it's night in one place, it's night everywhere.
Yeah, it's weird that it's daytime somewhere else.
Yep.
But yeah, the whole time dilation thing is interesting, and it's like, space and time are connected. If gravity changes the shape of space, then it changes the shape of time, and then I don't really know how the speed part works, but yeah, I think that it's also used as a really good dramatic device too. I mean, it's the main concept of the film. It's the main thing that creates most of the drama in the movie.
Yeah,
is the fact that there's a couple deaths here and there, and then he's like, I'm gonna drop into this black hole. See you later, Amelia. And she's like, no.
Well, it is kind of interesting. Even the death, like Doyle on Miller's planet, it feels very inconsequential. You did not. I don't think there was enough character development for me to care about Doyle at all. It was like it works in the sense that they show you, oh, there's real, consequences for this mission. That part works. But as far as like, as a viewer watching it, there was no emotional attachment to that character whatsoever.
Yeah, I felt nothing as the viewer. For a film as emotionally charged as that, I was kind of like, eh.
Is that done on purpose because they know they're going to empty your emotional cup later? That they're like, hold on, we can't hit him with a heavy death to begin with. Let's hit him with a red shirt death. Like in Star Trek. Yeah, it's like that's basically what they did. Was they sent a away mission to this planet, and the red shirt died. And we didn't fucking care, but all it showed us was like, oh shit's getting real. Like
is that a thing in Star Trek?
Yeah, you've never heard of that? The red shirts? Huh. Dude, pay attention. I know they did it for first generation. Next generation may be different, but the lowest ranking people on the Enterprise wore red shirts. Their uniform was a red shirt, and they will go on an away mission. They don't come back. If you see that the away mission is like Kirk, Spock, Dr. Bones, and then this random dude wearing a red shirt, he's just, oh fuck, like I'm not coming back.
The red shirt's dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that. That's hilarious, though. I'm going to use that reference from now on.
But yeah, that's it's also interesting too that on Miller's planet, that's where Cooper had his first idea about going back in time, because he realized during what was happening there, they were losing. And that was cool that like Amelia brought that up as like thinking of time as a resource. That was like you talked about, that was the biggest point of drama in this movie, is that Cooper is wasting the opportunity he has to be in his children's life. That is that is what's taking away, is like that the time resource is kind of cool, and the way they use that in this movie, I think. And that's where on Miller's planet, that's where he has the first idea that there's possibly a way that they could use time to help humanity. It's way too early in the movie for it to be like considered as a realistic idea, but that was the first time I actually like, first viewing that I've caught that, is like him actually like coming up with that idea during that point.
And I had a feeling that they were going to try to do something with that when he said it, and I was like, man, I really fucking hope not. And then they did. And I was like, oh shit.
But did you feel that it was going to have anything to do with the ghost at the beginning, though? Like,
no, I didn't really think about it. I thought that it might have had something to do with his dead wife.
Okay.
But that would have been way fantasy, like not. And I almost would have liked that better.
Really,
because there wouldn't have even been a conversation about explaining it. No one would waste their time trying.
Yeah, true.
It would just be like, yeah, it happened. But then I don't know, like if they did it like that, I would have been like, you know what, man, they should have done time travel instead, you know.
True.
But so I feel like I would have been disappointed no matter what. But I mean, really, the film for me was exciting just because of the humanistic side of it. The sci-fi portion was really not the thing that I found intriguing about the film.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's kind of like
I think like in the beginning, what you said, where it's not really a science fiction movie, it's just a drama set in space.
Yeah, it really is, and there's like relationships and attachments happening, and separations occurring, and you know, there's just there's a lot of concepts. I mean, you know, loneliness, abandonment, you know, childhood, maturity, death, rebirth, all that stuff.
Yeah.
You know, someone having to watch their kid die, and then the kid's not okay with it. Like, you're gonna go to a planet that I somehow know someone is on right now that I don't really know anything about, but somehow I'm omniscient in this moment for you to go back there because I'm an old woman.
Yeah, that I guess they must have had conversation. That part didn't make sense either. Like you said, like, well, how does she know about Bran? That is one thing that I did like that this movie did was, so I think it may just be like the bitter, lonely fuck in me, but I hate when a movie is super telegraphed that like, oh, the guy's gonna get the girl. You know, it's like I hate that. I love that this movie, like, it does kind of hint at maybe in the future he ended up with Brand, Amelia Brand. Not, I wish it was Michael Caine Brand. I wish that was the romance in this movie, was him and my. But no. But no, I guess it does kind of like hint at that maybe, like. But I love that they didn't end up together during the movie. I love that there was not this like forced romance of like, oh well, his wife's gone. Here's this NASA hottie. Like there's something's gonna happen here. Like.
NASA hottie.
Well, I mean, it's Anne Hathaway. Come on, that is NASA hottie supreme. Like,
well, you know, before we actually started recording, I was telling Ty that I wouldn't mind being stuck on a planet with Anne Hathaway.
Yeah,
I think that would be pretty cool. But yeah, it is kind of cool because you really don't expect it. Like, you know, even in like, you know, La La Land, if you've seen that, the two of them hate each other. You're like, but come on, it's Emma Stone and it's Ryan Gosling. They're yeah, come on.
Yeah, they're gonna bump bump uglies. Is that what it's called?
I think that's what they call it.
Right?
Not if it's Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling.
True, ain't nothing ugly about that.
Pretty beautiful. Hey, yeah. If you and I were to do it, bumping uglies.
Exactly.
For many reasons.
Well, so. We've covered everything from my notes. I've got two things that we still need to cover. I have a question for you though. We talked about it a little bit earlier. Do you know what we're doing for your episode next week? Have you picked a movie yet?
I have some ideas, but the one that I was looking at is actually I don't know anything about it, but it seems really fucked up. I saw it on Amazon Prime.
Hold on, you're thinking about us both going into a movie blind?
Yeah, why not?
I'm down with that. Well, because like I said earlier, I was under the impression that like, when we did the should you watch X movie, that it would be the person suggesting it obviously would say yes because they brought it to the table because they love this movie. I didn't really consider us like just suggesting movies that you wanted to watch that you had not seen before. That's actually kind of cool.
Curveball.
Yeah, I'm into it. I'm into it, man.
So it's called The Mandela Effect.
Oh, I watched that last week.
You've seen it?
Yeah, I watched it last week.
So did you like it? You hated it, didn't you?
I did not hate it. Okay, let me also hold on. Let me preface this by saying I didn't watch this. I had this on in the background while I was working. So it is a movie that would probably, for me to appreciate, would take me paying more attention to. So the context in which I watched it would not lead me to liking it. However, I do remember that the parts that I saw I was not a huge fan of. However, I'd totally be down for watching it again and giving it an actual shot.
Yeah, I thought it would. I just saw the plot and it seemed kind of fucked up to me, but it also reminded me of an episode of Doctor Who, and I fucking love Doctor Who.
But you're
So,
familiar with the actual Mandela effect, though, right? Like in reality, or
uh, is it like the Dunning-Kruger effect?
no? It's
Just
like
kidding.
so.
Actually, you know what movie?
Did you read any books as a children about like a family of bears? It was like a series of children's books, and there was a family of bears.
No,
You've never heard of like
there was. It wasn't a book. I think there was a movie or a TV series called the Berenstain Bears.
yes, no,
But
no. That okay? Hold on, Mandela effect. It is the Berenstain Bears. Stain. We all remember it as Berenstein. Stein. It is Berenstain. Stain. That is what the Mandela effect is. It is a shared.
Oh my God.
Yes, it is a shared memory that is false. We all remember this, and the theory or the joke is that like we were in a different universe where it was the Berenstain Bears, and it has changed, and that's something that we notice that is different, that we're all kind of catching, that is like our timeline is fucked up. That's the like the meme online, but yeah, that's what the Mandela effect is. It's where it's like a shared memory that people have that is not correct. And it's named after a lot of people in the 80s remembered Nelson Mandela dying in prison.
Really?
Yeah, there was like a shared memory that was like many people had the same memory of like, and that's why they call it the Mandela effect. Was it like it was a phenomenon that most people like remembered this event happening that never fucking happened.
This is fucked up. I don't think I want to watch that movie anymore. So I was actually thinking possibly Knives Out, which I thought was fantastic.
That I have not seen.
You haven't seen Knives Out?
I don't think so. What is Knives Out?
It's like a mystery comedy kind of. Chris Evans is in it.
No, I've not seen this, and I would be very into watching that.
Okay, that's one that I really want you to watch. So that I think I would prefer for us to do that one, because that's a movie that if you haven't seen it, I really want you to see
it. Next, okay, I'm down for that being next week. Next week then is Knives Out. Okay.
Yeah, it won't be as profound really as this one, but there is a lot to talk about, I think, in the film.
Sweet. I am very down. Like this is the first movie we picked for this year of movie episodes. So the first movie you picked says a lot about you. So I picked Interstellar. I'm a nerd. I'm deep. I cry a lot. That's what this says about me. I'm excited to see what Knives Out is going to say about you for the upcoming year.
Great. Well,
it's okay. Hold on. I see Daniel Craig and I see Chris Evans. So you're into hot dudes. I can tell that much about you. You love some hot dudes.
That's all you need to know. That's one thing you should know about me. I'm into hot dudes.
It's one thing you should know about me. I don't have any wheels on my car.
I was hoping you would catch that.
Yeah, I definitely did. So we set up the next movie. I'm done with my notes. What else do you have for us tonight, man? What else on Interstellar do you want to touch on?
All I've really got is another terrible Matthew McConaughey impression.
Oh, for your quote?
Yep.
Okay, well that at least tells me we picked different quotes, because my quote.
Oh, wait, hold on. I do have one thing that I did want to touch on, though.
Yeah, go ahead.
I like the fact that they call them hibernation chambers and not cryo sleep. That it seems less like unnecessarily advanced.
Yeah,
I like that it's I just wanted to mention that. It's just one little tidbit, not an important thing. But that's the one major thing that I really enjoyed about the film that they didn't do, because every sci-fi film calls it that, cryo sleep.
And I think one thing they did really well in this, that you even texted me a picture that kind of spoke to this, was I feel like the ship environments felt very realistic. And it was even like you texted me that picture of like the Chemex coffee maker chilling in the background. It was like, hey, there's a Chemex coffee maker on this ship in Interstellar. And it was like,
that was in the kitchen on Earth.
Oh, was that? Okay, never mind.
Yeah,
I thought it was on the ship in space, but either way, but like, okay, I guess it doesn't speak to my point. But I feel like the environments they had on the ship, like you're saying though, with the calling them a just hibernation chamber instead, it felt realistic, not like the unnecessary gaudy sci-fi feeling you sometimes get. But like, oh, go into the cryo sleep chamber, blah blah blah. Like,
Yeah, I did like the fact that they didn't seem like it wasn't like super technologically advanced. That there was, yeah, I do agree with you on that. That was a cool part of the movie.
Which I think it speaks more to, like we're saying, like this movie really is just a drama about humanity
Yeah.
that just so happens to be set in space. It's not like you don't need to be a sci-fi nerd to go into this and like it. Like I could see very many I mean, someone whose favorite movie is like The Notebook or some other tearjerker could go into this and absolutely love it. It has nothing that, like, you don't need to love, sci-fi or aliens or anything for this to be a great movie for you.
Yeah, and I think that's the part of it. It's like, the word I kept saying was accessible. And I think it's a really accessible movie.
Yeah. Other than, I mean, like the things I brought up earlier, some of the ideas of like time dilation and stuff like that, or traveling through black holes and wormholes, some of that stuff is not necessarily what I would call accessible. It's not the Rick and Morty stuff of like, oh, you need to have a huge IQ to get this movie. But it is like, there are certain ideas that will seem like, I think it's funny, like the idea, like I brought up earlier with time dilation, that seems like a stupid science fiction trope if you don't understand that is real.
Right.
That just seems like something like, oh, that's a stupid thing they made up for this movie to make this work. It's like, well, no, that's how physics works. That is real. That is a fundamental part of our universe. Like, I think that's interesting. But yeah, so you picked a Matthew McConaughey quote, which is great because I know the quote that I picked. It is not Matthew McConaughey. It's a great quote though. I guarantee you would not pick this because it's a very like, I think it's a line that goes unnoticed in the movie. It kind of sneaks by you. Like I'll start the line and you probably won't even notice that this was even in the movie. So my quote is, "Do not go gentle into that good night." I'm kidding.
I was about to resign. Like, I quit.
No. I'm kidding. Actually, my quote is a Matthew McConaughey quote, and I'm not going to do Matthew McConaughey, but I am going to do, if I were acting that scene, how I would say it with his inflection. But it is, well, we used to look up and wonder at our place in the stars. Now, we just look down and worry about our place in the dirt. I liked that line a lot. I thought that was a good line when he was talking to Lithgow on the porch about humanity's future.
I don't even remember that, but that's a great line.
It sums up his character a lot of like how he has the need to explore and how humanity's kind of changed. And it is like, it's necessary to like, once shit hits the fan, you do kind of focus on what needs to get done rather than exploration. But I liked how that does kind of like sum up his character a lot.
Matthew McConaughey was in Contact.
Yes, he was.
And he said something similar to Jodie Foster, I think.
Oh, you might be right. I love how in Contact he's like the opposite role. He's like the religious like weirdo. Yep. All right, so what's your quote for tonight?
A giant sarcastic robot. What a great idea.
I love it.
It's the least profound thing in the entire movie, but I was like, that's great.
I do love the whole like with the humor setting and sarcastic setting and like the was it discretion setting or trust setting or whatever. I thought that was great.
It's a comic relief character that has no effect on the audience whatsoever.
Yeah.
It doesn't make it any less heavy. It actually somehow makes it worse.
That was great though. That the scene where where they realize that man is trying to maroon them. And they figure out that TARS disabled the automatic docking procedure, and that's when he's like, what's your trust setting? And TARS is like, obviously lower than yours, Cooper. I love that. Like that's so great. The way they like
that part was.
Yeah, the banter between the robots and the humans, I think, is great. Like, it's just it's a cool level of like, and even the joke in the beginning about like, I blow you out the airlock, and then he turns on his like joking light or whatever. Like, is it great? More slaves for my robot colony.
That was I think that was right when they mentioned that. Oh, by the way, it's made to be funny. Humor setting. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it was a good one though. I'm glad you enjoyed this movie. I was definitely scared going into this that it was going to be the Drive experience where because I mean, like I said, this is probably in my top 10 favorite movies ever. I'm a big fan of this movie. I love it. I was worried that it was going to be like you were just going to hate it and tear it to shreds, and it was going to be like an hour of me just sitting here like, okay,
I mean, there's parts of the film that I did hate, but generally I think it's good, and I do think that people should watch it.
Good.
Because there's much more good than anything else.
Nice. Hell yeah. Well, guys, folks, that's going to bring us to the end of this episode of the Metacast podcast. If you've enjoyed the episode, if you enjoyed the episode and you've watched us on YouTube, both of those things, hit like, comment, subscribe. I don't have my notes in front of me. I don't know what I'm supposed to say at the end of this here. My goal was to change this for this year, and I haven't changed it yet. So my outro is like, I'm struggling right now.
This will take you to the end of this week's episode. This is your first night of Fight Club. Yeah. You have to fight.
That's actually perfect. That should be in there. Yeah. But no, guys, if you've enjoyed this episode and you're watching us on YouTube, hit the like button, subscribe, and comment, and let us know what you thought about Interstellar. Is it a movie you enjoyed, or did you hate it? If you're interested in further taking part or being a guest on a future episode and watching a movie with us, join our Discord. Links down there. And we will be live next week, Wednesday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on twitch.tv/TylerTV. Thanks everyone for listening, and I hope you have a great week. All right.
Dude.